Welcome back to another edition of Tide Pod on the YouTube home for TideIllustrated.com. Jack Knowlton, Tony Sakalis here to recap another few practices, another week, if you will, of Alabama at fall camp. Tony was in attendance for a few practices here in the last week. And I mean, the biggest hard-hitting story, which I think has to lead, we're journalists, Tony. We lead with the most important news at the top. Alabama has ice cream at practice now.
Yeah, I knew you were going there.
Huge news. No, we're going to dive into, everything you wrote about from practice this week. But like I asked last week, the general vibe, obviously, with the new era, it seemed like the energy from the first couple practices was pretty good and upbeat and all that. What did you notice this time around from the next couple practices for Alabama? And specifically, I know you talked to a few guys with DeBoer. It's got a new ice cream truck tradition going that looks like it's gonna start after practice.
No, with the ice cream truck, I mean, man, our message board could not be more concerned about that. First of all, you've had the ice cream truck, and then the next day you had the players watching the basketball game against Serbia, and you also had like a post where they were looking at baby pictures, and all of our message board at the Champions Lounge just kind of worrying if Alabama's gone soft. I don't think that's the case, but yeah,
soft serve
maybe soft serve. That was a good. But no, I think it's a good kind of way to keep the team fresh. I mean, it's been hot. They've been working. They've been busting their butts. It's been tough. They've had to adjust to a morning schedule. I don't think throwing them an ice cream party or letting them watch a basketball game, which happened after practice, is any distraction to camp. But these are human beings, and so I feel like having an ice cream truck on campus to kind of reward that hard work, I like that as an idea. It kind of made me think back to when I was a kid, and the ice cream truck coming up. It was kind of funny when you're interviewing players and you're hearing the little ice cream music songs, whatever, the parlor shop,
the jingle
songs, that play at an ice cream machine. But the players seem to like it. They're pretty pumped about it. So I think it's a good event, and it's just kind of like an emphasis of how Kalen DeBoer does things a little bit different than Nick Saban, and I think it can work both ways.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think that's you kind of segued it perfectly, Tony. We'll get into some of the actual nitty gritty of camp. Ice cream favorite flavors aside. You mentioned that leadership style, and not only is DeBoer obviously differing from Saban, but you wrote about Kane, Wommack, and Kalen DeBoer and kind of their sort of yin and yang. You had a great quote from Tim Keenan where he compared it to a Bible verse. Explain that comment from him, and what did you notice with what the players were saying in terms of how DeBoer and Wommack kind of differ, in terms of their leadership on the field and what you've noticed from them in fall camp so far?
Yeah, I mean, you just have to be out there for a couple of minutes to see the difference between Kalen DeBoer and Kane Wommack. I mean, it's just it's a totally different dynamic, right? It's DeBoer's very cool as a cucumber, even toned. Sometimes you lose him on the field because he's kind of incognito. There's nothing he doesn't have that straw hat that Nick Saban has or anything like that is an identifying mark. So it's sometimes you kind of lose track of him because he's not super loud. And then you got Kane Wommack just yelling and screaming at players. Same with Freddie Roach too. But Kane, there's been some clips of him that are not so PG, not so a little bit more Old Testament, is what I said in my story. He brings a little bit more wrath, but it seems to work both ways. I think the players respond to both. I think they like the even keel nature of Kalen. I think that in itself kind of provides some confidence. And then sometimes you do need that kick up the butt, and you have that with certain coaches on the staff as well. And then to be mistaken either, Jack. I think Kalen does have times when he gets on the players. I don't think he's just some kumbaya hippie out there. He's gonna get on your butt if you don't do something. But it's more of a different style and a more calm approach and more just letting things happen and kind of being a lot more measured with his reactions than some of the other coaches.
Yeah, I think you said that well. I mean, that's kind of what Wommack explained, I remember in a quote as well, where he said, that's just because we differ in that, that's not to say Kalen isn't getting on, on our case. And he had a good quote where he talked about, I'll just read it. What he said, when you think about it from a head coaching perspective, the way you want to build a staff is you don't want all the same personalities and you don't want yes men. You want people who are complementary to you, to who you are as a head coach, but can also lean into your vision and they can accomplish your vision through their personality. And I think that is something that's something that comes very natural for Kalen and I. Tim Keenan, I'll add this to what he said. If the coach is going to be laid back, you have to have somebody who's going to be that firecracker. Man, Coach Wommack, he's always going to bring that juice, which I loved. That reminded me of I don't know if you've seen the movie Heat, but the action is the juice. If you're a fan of that. But yeah, thoughts on that, especially coming from a veteran like Tim Keenan, that feels good.
Yeah, you just can't have a million, or you just can't have all, Kalen DeBoers out there. There wouldn't be enough quote unquote juice. Not to criticize Kalen DeBoer, but if everyone's just kind of more even keel, I think, you might see some players not, be as alert. You need that high energy guy, whether it's, Scott Cochran in the past, or Nick Saban would throw tirades, or now it's Kane Wommack or Freddie Roach, or I saw Mo Linguist. Yeah, Mo Linguist can get into it as well. So you got a few guys, different strokes for different folks kind of guy. But on the flip side, if you have everyone just screaming and yelling, and it creates chaos. I think the calm, collected approach kind of create some organization in the practice, and it gives a cool head to kind of balance everything out. So you do kind of need that yin and that yang of you can't have the scales tilted too much to one side, or else chaos would ensue. So I think Alabama's got a nice little balance. And I think too, part of the contrast with Kalen is not just Kane Wommack. It's going from one head coach that was known for, being one of the more fiery. Look, Nick Saban made someone cry when he was coaching the Miami Dolphins in the NFL, and he made a grown man cry. So, you go from that to a more laid back coach. It's going to look more severe, but it's kind of a fun thing to examine. And it's just it's a different world in Alabama's preseason camp, but it does seem like everything's clicking in the right direction, and that it does seem that Alabama's making progress. And we don't get to see everything behind the scenes. It's been nice to see practice. It's been nice to talk to assistants, but there is still that behind the curtain that just remains to be seen. I think that's at every program. No one's going to give you a full access look at everything that goes on. But I do get the feel that Alabama is really confident in how its preseason camp has kind of been just the way it's went the last, I guess now they've done 8 practices. So I think that things are going good, even if they look a little bit different.
Yeah, you mentioned it's a fun thing to examine, but it's also an important thing for the reasons you just articulated. It's a new regime, and you're trying to peek behind the curtain as best you can, get a read on these guys. So my read on Kane Wommack is, for him, the action is the juice. So he can embrace that, I guess. But some stuff on their leadership styles.
Did you see Kane Wommack with the give me your money, give me my money?
I did. He's also in on the trends, which I do love. Yes.
Yeah. Can you imagine if they would have gotten? I think they would have gotten Nick Saban on that.
You would have to.
They could have definitely pranked Nick Saban. Nick Saban would have never known that coming.
No, I don't think he's a TikTok.
Would you have had the guts to do that to Nick Saban, to kind of set him up like that? That's the real question, because he would have definitely fallen. I bet you. I'm thinking Kalen DeBoer would have fell for it too.
Definitely.
I don't know.
Definitely.
He's I feel like he's on Twitter, but I don't really know if he's going.
The only counter I would think is that because I know at least he has a daughter who's college age, maybe is in on the trends, maybe tells him the trends. I don't know.
Maybe she's already pulled it on him.
Yeah, maybe it's already been attempted.
Yeah,
the players can't try. Who knows? It's a different time. We're getting TikTok trends. We're getting. Kane Wommack is the yin and yang with Kalen DeBoer. It's an interesting peek behind the curtain. Getting into some of the on-field stuff, I know, like we mentioned with the ice cream, obviously practice was indoors for one day. You got to watch some things closer up. I know the running backs were, kind of a topic of conversation. I want to check in there. There was some comments made by Robert Gillespie, but I want to get your thoughts, Tony. There was some stuff said, I know, about Richard Young, obviously in the mix, along with Justice Haynes and Jam Miller. What do you think of what has been said about the running backs, and maybe dive into that a little bit with maybe a 2/3-headed monster, I believe is how you put it in your story, for Alabama at the running back spot?
I think it's going to be more of a 1-2 punch, but then at the same time, I think you really can't count out Richard Young. But really, the thing you got to look at is, regardless of who wins this starting job, and there will be eventually a depth chart, and somebody's going to have to break the huddle. There'll be like a starter, but I don't necessarily think that's going to matter during games. I think it's going to be kind of rotational, and they'll go with the hot hand. That's one of the things that Robert Gillespie said, is that they'll go with who is ever hot during the game. So if Justice Haynes starts the game and gets stuffed a few times, and then they put in Jam Miller and he breaks a few big games, they're going to continue to go with Jam until that kind of runs out, and maybe spell him again for Justice. Richard Young can come in. I think you can keep 2 backs really happy. Can you keep 3 backs really happy? I'm not sure if you can do that. But at the same time, I do think that there will be some reps, obviously more reps than last year for Richard Young. The interesting thing about these guys is they can all kind of do the same thing. There's not I think when you look at the backfield as a whole, like maybe Daniel Hill, the freshman out of Meridian, is he's so much bigger than everyone else. So he adds something totally different. But really all of them, whether it's Justice Haynes, Jam Miller, Richard Young, and then Kevin Riley too as a freshman, they all kind of similar in what they bring in terms of a skill set. So it'll be interesting to see how is it just going to be an assembly line, or a running back by committee, where it's just who's ever fresh, and then they'll just go from there and see who has the hot hand. It'll be interesting to see how they kind of put that together. But I do expect Justice and Jam to get the majority of the reps. The one thing too I'm interested in is do we start seeing some dual running back formations? Do you put Justice Haynes out of the slot and maybe do him on an end around and do some misdirections with him and Jalen Milroe on some read option stuff? I think there's a lot of stuff you can do with 2 running backs. How much Kalen DeBoer likes to kind of scheme and kind of exploit weaknesses in the defense. This just gives him another wrinkle that he can maybe possibly use in that regard. And I think you could do that with all 3 of the backs, just mix match 2 of them on the field.
Just the only thing I'll add to that on Richard Young, just a quote from what Kalen DeBoer said, at least, like you said, where they go with some possible options. This seems encouraging. DeBoer, he's taken that step from the spring, learning the offense. He's out there getting lined up, doing his job, doing it at a high level and doing it over again. He's explosive. He really got more physical as the spring went on. And it really picked up from at the end of spring ball. Speaking of kind of
you saw that in the spring game with Richard Young. He ran super hard. So, I think that's what got, a lot of Alabama fans excited about him is, his ability to kind of just be that bowling ball. Not to say that Jam Miller can do that. And we've seen Justice Haynes do that as well. So, but I think that, he really shut off that power. I think he gained 9 pounds or something like that. They all kind of gained weight. But I think that will help as well in terms of, just banging bodies and being a tougher runner. That combined with, another year in the program, because for him and Justice, Justice got a little bit more work than Richard, but, they both were in their first year last year. I think you could see that big step from year 1 to year 2. So that'll be interesting as well. Yeah.
I want to ask you another thing on the running backs, with something that Robert Gillespie said, where he was asked about the pass protection aspect of what they're going to have to do next year. He said, none of these guys have really been in a lot of those 3rd and long, 3rd and short situations where they've got to go protect the quarterback. We work on it every day in individual periods. We watch it every day. We train our eyes. We watch cut-ups. So hopefully those are things that will show up in the big moments. What'd you think of that? Maybe, this, obviously it's a younger running back group, but maybe lacking the experience right now in the pass protection side of things that they're going to need with a quarterback that likes to improvise sometimes in Jalen Milroe.
Yeah, that's something you look at a guy like Jam Miller. That's where you really expect him to kind of step up, entering his third year with the program or fourth
Mhm.
year, no, third year with the
Third, yep.
program. Yeah, I think, you know, that's where you start to kind of mature. You start to pick up some stuff. And when we talked to Jam Miller, he said like the biggest part of his game that he grew in was pass protection. And I think that's really important. And look, when we're going to the, you know, if they can all do the same thing and there's a, you know, battle of who wants to be on the field, it could come down to who's the best pass blocker. You know, like who that could be the best way to get on the field. You know, if you're Richard Young, maybe that's your way to get on the field. You know, you could become the third down back if you could pick up, you know, be a really good pass blocker. I mean, I think that could be, that's going to be crucial towards, you know, making this offense go, because you are going to pass the ball a lot. You know, and while they are going to use the backs in the passing game, there are going to be times, especially when they're trying to fix things or get things settled with the two tackle positions. I think you're going to probably want to have that back there as an emergency blocker, just to kind of sweep up some stuff if somebody gets past the tackle. So I think you're gonna see those responsibilities be key for Alabama, and that's something that they struggled with last year too. It wasn't just the tackles. I think it was more the tackles, but the running backs, you know, didn't pick up blocks well last year. You saw a lot of them get knocked back. They're going to need, you know, better performance from that unit to kind of help. Every little bit of help is going to be needed, especially with a quarterback like Jalen Milroe, who, you know, has held the ball onto the ball a little bit longer, trying to make plays. I think, you know, having a guy that can provide that last second, you know, block to maybe buy another second of time for Milroe will be key. But yeah, that's something that, you know, I think that's an underrated, you know, maybe red flag or concern we had about Alabama heading into this season, is just that, you know, I think Jam Miller was the highest rated pass blocker of that unit, and I think he had like a 55 pass blocking grade from Pro Football Focus. So yeah, it's definitely an area of improvement. But I do expect, you know, you see veteran backs kind of pick things up. I kind of expect him and you know, Justice Haynes as well to kind of improve in that area.
Yeah, I wonder, and maybe this is a dumb take, so you can interject if you'd like, but you turn to a guy that I know we're both a fan of, and you know, you mentioned Daniel Hill, a freshman. He's a bigger guy. Maybe he comes in and you know, it's like 6'1", 240. Maybe he's a little better in pass pro as a freshman. Maybe that's where he sees some action.
Yeah, you
in
think
year one.
Yeah, maybe from like a physical standpoint, but then you got to think
Yeah.
like how many times in Daniel Hill's career has he had the pass blocker? He's not probably doing that at all.
Right.
Like, you know, and he came from a nice, a big powerhouse Mississippi school in Meridian, you know, historic power. But like, yeah, he's still the star player of his team. He's, you know, getting direct snaps. He's running the ball. I mean, he's doing just about everything. So the last thing that he's going to be doing on his high school is blocking. So that's where really this comes from. Is like, you look at all these guys. You look at Justice Haynes. You look at Jam Miller. Like, when in their career have they really had to block? They've always been the guy. That's any star running back in high school. You know, you never really, you're trying to win games. You know, you don't really want to spend too much time with your best player not having the ball in his hands. So it's something that gets learned. But one of the things that you that you brought up is, you know, they've been looking at film, and it's not, you know, it's not necessarily the sexiest aspect of the game, but you look at some of the guys that they mentioned, Brian Robinson Jr., Najee Harris, you know, those are some big backs that had 1,000-yard careers, are playing in the NFL right now. And they all learned it. You know what I'm saying? So it is something that you have to get to the next level. And it's something that, you know, you have to get to really be a complete back. So I think everyone in the unit realizes the importance of pass protection. You know, the thing that Robert Gillespie talked about, two biggest things for the running back room is pass protection and ball security. And, you know, those are the things you kind of overlook when you're looking at the playmaking ability, the speed. You're looking at, you know, his ability to break tackles, a hard runner. But really those two areas, if you can be a good pass blocker and you know, hold on to the ball, chances are you're going to play a lot. And so I think that's, you know, something that all these backs are really focusing on.
I'm just going to keep finding excuses to bring up Daniel Hill because I'm a fan. I think he's a really fun prospect. So I hope he finds, you know, he has a good career.
Future, but I don't know. I don't really see, barring an injury, I don't, you know, and this is not even a knock on Daniel Hill. It's just the guy that, you know, it's going to be tough to get into this running back room early on. I think you can see him maybe special teams and, you know, And that's been kind of the route, right, for Alabama running backs is, start off on special teams, contribute there, then move into some things. He is a powerful guy. I mean, like, I guess if you wanted a goal line back, or maybe if you wanted to like put him as a fullback, but then
I
you've
was
got
going to
other.
say we could just Big Ten this and
Yeah, but
I
then you've got Robbie
formation.
Yates that does that, Jack. I mean, Robbie Yates does a
true.
great job of that, and he's even bigger and better as a blocker than Daniel Hill is. I mean, maybe Daniel Hill would be better on a handoff if Alabama seldom hands off the ball to the fullback. I'm still waiting for, I know we're kind of going off topic here, but I'm still waiting for Robbie Yates to get like a surprise handoff and run it in. Maybe Kalen DeBoer has that drawn up. That'd be kind of neat. Be a nice little reward for him. Yeah.
That does feel like a Kalen DeBoer trickeration moment that he'd maybe try with Robbie Yates. But yeah, there you go. Running backs, pass blocking is a big thing for them to improve in ball security as well. We'll see if maybe we look for some fumble drills. I was watching a Nebraska drill where it was their teammates. Literally, it was the running back having to run through a pile of their teammates while they're just hitting the ball, trying to knock it out. And if it got knocked out, they had to run a lap. So maybe Gillespie.
Did you see the clip that I posted with the wipeout drill from the indoor practice a couple days ago?
We should maybe touch on that. Are you talking about the receivers one on the sideline?
Oh, yeah, it was the receivers, sidelines, and running backs. They all did it. They all did those little swing passes that is by the sideline. I call it the wipeout drill because it looks like the game show wipeout. I mean, you had somebody with one of those like padded sticks, prodding them, and then there was literally like a medicine ball. A guy. The accuracy on this medicine ball was great. Like the timing that he had, like so that it would hit at the right spot, was great. I mean, like this really needs a commissioner. Like we need to make this like a little sport or a game show. It's just it was fun to watch. I wish they would just do it the whole practice. I wish there was another ball heading the other way. Kind of like make it not a sideline drill, but then they have to keep their head on a swivel.
It did feel like a Madden drill. It felt like something you do in your player career to get some XP.
I haven't played the college football video game yet for like on Dynasty Mode or anything. Is it? They have.
I haven't seen. There are drills similar. Yeah, there are drills that are similar on the Road to Glory mode. Yeah, all sorts of fun things going on in the indoor facility. But yeah, we'll go to good plug for the YouTube. We post highlights from every camp, so go on there and watch it. Tony got good video of it. So
and the best part of that too was Jamarcus Russell's commentary, where he'd be like yelling at people. Not Jamarcus Russell. I always call this man Jamarcus Russell. I hear Jamarcus and I think Russell. It's just probably
a little bit. That's a little bit disrespectful to Jamarcus Shepard considering the career.
Sorry to everyone listening. I'd say it's going to be the last time I make this mistake, but it's not because I keep on calling Russell. Oh my gosh, I keep on calling
Russell Shepard.
Russell Shepard. I'm just like making
Get it together, Tony. Good Lord.
Oh, goodness gracious. Jamarcus Shepard. I'm just going to call him Coach Shep.
Yep. Coach Shep is a great nickname.
That's just that, I'm just going to have to go that route because I cannot say his name right. Anyways, he's been the best part of that drill too. It's just like hearing his commentary where he's yelling at people from being, why are you out of bounds?
Why are you out of bounds? Great.
Yeah. If they did get hit by the ball or if they like slowed down too much to get, away from the ball, then, he would yell like tackle or hit, he would call out like, oh, you would have been stopped. So he was kind of the, I guess maybe the referee to this little game show they had, but it was fun to kind of hear him yelling from the sidelines as well.
Yeah, just some great personality along the sidelines in Alabama's coaches. I want to flip to the other side of the ball with the edge rushers, Tony, because you wrote a good article about these former 5-star 2023 guys who are starting to make a little bit of noise in practice. We'll start obviously now with Kane Wommack. He's got the Bandit and the Wolf spots, kind of his 2 edge rusher positions. We'll talk about Jan Z. Pierre and Quay Rousseau in a second, but I want to start at the Bandit spot with Keon Keeley. You talked about how he gained weight this offseason, transitioned inside. I'll offer this quote for from Wommack, and I'll toss it to you. I think he's taken to that role, speaking of the bandit role, and he's learning a ton right now, but you see him taking some steps. I thought he's another guy who's made great steps from the spring to the summer. So Keon Keeley, looking like he's, at the very least making some noise, getting more comfortable in a new role after moving inside and gaining some weight this offseason.
Yeah, patience is the key there. I mean, like Keon Keeley, I think a lot of people expected him to be an instant contributor because he signed as the number 5 overall player in the class. He was the top weak side defensive end last year. He's a really talented kid. He did a lot, in high school, and he looks like a guy that's going to be a really big part of the defense. But it's really just kind of like that transition to the college game has been a little bit difficult for him. And I think with his body type, they kind of found that he was going to be better if they, kind of beefed him up and made him more of a defensive lineman than kind of a stand-up linebacker. So you're seeing him play that, bandit role, which is kind of like the strong, like the heavy defensive edge rusher in Kane Wommack's 4-2-5 setup, and he gained 35 pounds this offseason. So that's a huge transition. It's, Alabama updated their roster, and Keon Keeley was the biggest change from the returning players. So 35 pounds is a lot to gain, and it's 35 pounds of muscle. So I think everything's kind of new for him. He looks the part now of that bandit role. He's not yet playing the part of that bandit role. I mean, he's not used to playing all the time with his hand in the dirt. And there's certain, drills during practice that take him a little bit longer to understand because it's just, he's learning, Yeah. He's a second-year player. None of these 3 people we're going to talk about played any snaps last year. So, yes, he had a year in the program, but then everything got turned on its head. He's got a new coaching staff. He's got a new position. So, I mean, like in practice, you're seeing a lot of Freddie Roach take Keon Keeley off to the side and do, a lot of one-on-one stuff. And you can see a little bit of frustration from Keon. I mean, it's like, Freddie Roach has been pretty patient with him. There's been times when he's kind of joked a little bit that, just because he's just kind of an animated guy. But you could see that Keon's a little bit frustrated. I think there's some growing pains, and it's tough for a 5-star kid to it's humbling. I mean, it's to be at the back of the line, to really kind of be so far away, it seems like, from, stepping into that big role. I don't expect Keon Keeley to really make a big move this year, especially when you look at like who's ahead of him on the roster. You've got Jamarian Latham, who's coming back. You got the Texas A&M transfer, LT Overton. I think those 2 are going to be your 2 big bandits. And you got guys like Jordan Renaud, a little bit ahead of Keon Keeley. Maybe just because Keon Keeley has that pass rushing, skill set from being an outside linebacker, you would think there might be a package they use. But to be honest with you, I kind of think he's one for the future. That being said, I don't think he's a bust. And I think a lot of times when you look, a 5-star hasn't really made an impact in 2 years, you start getting that bust label. I think it's too early to give that to Keon. And it's just been such a weird transition for him. So like I said from the start, it's all about patience with him. I think there's a player there. I think that, it's just going to take some time. And fortunately for Alabama, it's got the depth to kind of work that out. But so I think, you'd like, from an Alabama perspective, you would like him to make some strides, get comfortable. And then I think at this time, maybe even next spring, you start seeing him. That's when I think you're going to be looking for Keon Keeley to make that push to really, I think you'll see next spring and moving forward after that, like, okay, is he going to make it at Alabama? And so Right now it's all about growth.
Yeah, I think it's good to touch on some of those future guys, especially when you're wondering where the 5-star recruits are at. On the Wolf position, Yanzi Pierre, Quay Rousseau, Pierre, he gained some weight this offseason as well. Kane Wommack had a long quote about him where he talked about kind of a smooth, fluid athlete. Rousseau as well. Obviously, he's got a good frame. He's about 6'2", 251 on, like you said, the recent remeasurables. And then this is my number 2 favorite Wommack quote that we're going to talk about, where he said, "Physically, we use the term freak around here, but when you talk about him, the guy is truly freaky in terms of his strength, athleticism, and speed." That was
Rousseau.
Was that about Rousseau? Yeah, that was Rousseau. Yep. And then Yanzi Pierre as well. So what do you think of the two? But that's my favorite. Sorry, that's my favorite Kane Wommack quote. But the 2 Wolf positions as well, getting a little bit of praise from.
Yeah, I mean, like, to be fair, they're both pretty freaky in terms of athletes. We can start with Rasal. I think he's going to probably be the guy that's closer to playing. He's been like third in line. You got Q Robinson, who's just like the dad of the group. I mean, like it's funny because you got Christian Robinson, who's the outside linebackers coach, and he'll be like doing a drill, and then you almost have like Q Robinson as a coach on the field, just kind of like he'll sometimes Christian Robinson will have Q like go through the drill and like demonstrate everything like as an assistant coach, and then you'll see everybody kind of follow suit. And then you got Keanu Coate, who's another veteran. He's like really the only other veteran in that group. I expect him to play a lot more. But then after that, then that's where you get Quay Russaw. And Quay is the biggest guy in the group. I think you had the measurables there. I can look it up. But 6'2", 251.
Yeah, 6'2", 251.
He's a little bit bigger and thicker, and but he's also got that speed. I mean, he's a guy that played inside linebacker in high school, so he didn't make quite the transition that Keon Keeling made from outside linebacker to defensive line, but going from inside to outside linebacker, because the Wolf position is really an outside linebacker position, he still has that, even being 251 pounds, he's a guy that maybe be able to drop back or at least set the edge in the running game. So I think that that will be, pretty important. I think being a bigger guy, he might be better on those early downs where he can kind of like, especially if he can get out on the edge and really stop the run. He's got that kind of that extra bulk to go up against the run. And then maybe, that kind of brings me to Yanzi Pierre. Last year, I think part of the reason why he didn't play was just he's a little thin. He was kind of a very lean guy. He's a very long defender. I think he needed those extra weight, that extra weight that he had. What did I say? He added, I have to go back and look at 16 pounds from last year. And I think that that's important. He needed those 16 pounds in order to kind of, it's not high school anymore. In order to play in the SEC and keep up and get past some of these offensive linemen and stuff, I think that that's important. With Yanzi Pierre, I think you have a really great pass rusher. And I know he's like fourth in line, but I wouldn't be surprised if maybe there's, a package for him just to exploit his pass rushing ability and maybe find a way to get him in, even if, at this point with the people ahead of him, even if it's just, clear third and longs or clear passing downs, I think you get that athleticism on the field because he is really good. He's smooth. He's a lean. He's everything you want in that edge rusher position. I think both of those guys are going to be really key for Alabama moving forward, Russell and Pierre. But so I think it's going to be about finding them reps, and both of those guys are going to have to be consistent. I think that's one of the things that Kane Wommack talked about. I think when he was talking about Pierre was that, consistency is important. It's about, yes, you can make the play, but can you do that over a series? Can we play you multiple times? Are you going to make mistakes? Because there's a lot of competition there. It's kind of like the running back room where it's like, if you don't step up, somebody else is going to. There's even more competition at that Wolf position than there is in the running back room, which is kind of crazy to think about. But you've got some guys there. So it's a good problem to have. And injuries are always something to consider as well. But I think Alabama's going to be really strong there, and it could be interesting to see how they're going to do. Maybe there'll be different packages. I don't think anybody really wants to see this infamous cheetah package that Pete Golding had. That it sounded cool with 3 edge rushers on the field, but just never really worked in theory. But maybe something where you can get certain packages, mix things up, make it harder for offenses to scheme against. I think they definitely have plenty of edge rushers, both at the bandit position and at the Wolf position to kind of work with.
Yeah, I think that's the promising sign. Is a good way to end it there with they have players that are pushing the starters, and then you have 2 guys, it seems like in Rousseau and Pierre, who are going to be names to know in the long term. Dropping back a little deeper in the defense, Tony, I want to talk about this before we talk about what you wrote ahead of Alabama's first scrimmage coming up on Saturday, which is when y'all will be listening to this or watching this podcast. But the Husky position, there were some comments made about it. I'll read what Wommack said. Said, I think Devonta Smith has done a really good job, and Red Morgan has really impressed me. It's always fun to watch freshmen from where they were in the spring to where they're headed and that jump they make throughout the summertime. I think he's probably made a huge jump in that regard. What do you think about that? Obviously, Devonta Smith a guy that's a presumed starter. Feels like he's going to be a good contributor if he stays healthy. But Red Morgan getting some praise from Kane Wommack. What do you think? What did you make of his comments about the Husky spot in that defensive backfield?
Yeah, I think it's Devontae Smith's position to lose. I think he probably would have played a lot more, if not started last year, if he wasn't dealing with an injury. But that's the case with him. It's you have that foot injury, and as a defensive back, once you get those foot injuries, they can be kind of lingering, and you obviously need your feet at that position. That can be not the best thing to deal with. So it's kind of like, well, that will create a question mark over Devontae Smith and just can he stay healthy? So I think that's what makes it so important to have a guy like Red Morgan who can step up, who took some first team reps in the spring. Another guy that was mentioned at that position and we saw work during drills is King Mack, is the Penn State transfer. Now, he's still in his first, camp with the team. He joined after spring camp as a transfer from Penn State, but he's a guy that I think is going to be a contributor, especially next year, like a really big contributor. He was a big addition. So he's another guy that just adds depth at that Husky position. I think between those three guys, you're pretty set there. I like all three of those guys. Obviously, if things went really haywire, you could move Malachi more to that Husky spot. That's basically the star role, which is basically what he's been playing his whole career. I think they want to move Malachi back. So Malachi could probably show that, part of it, I think, is for Malachi, who can show NFL scouts that he can play deep safety as well as box safety. But at the other hand, side of that, it's also, from a success standpoint, you've got one of your more knowledgeable defenders, one of your veterans back there calling the defense, kind of being that safety net. So, you kind of have him in that rover role. I think they like Malachi in the back, so they would like one of those, three Husky options to step up. I think they will, Jack. I personally, I think that Devontae Smith, I'm pretty high on him, and I think he's shown a lot. And we've heard a lot of great things about him. It's just if he can stay healthy. And I think obviously he's healthy right now. So, even if he does experience another injury during the season, you would think that would come at a time where maybe Red Morgan's more ready to step up, as a freshman. So I think that those things will kind of take care of themselves. It's not necessarily as strong of depth as we were talking about at some of the other positions, but I think you've got some really capable options there.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I think Devonta Smith's gonna make the step up too. It just feels like he's been so unlucky his whole career. It's bound to kind of click for him. And like you said, it opens up so many more options if you don't have to kind of pigeonhole Malachi more back into there. And then you have a different hole that pops up at the deep safety spot. So it's all the puzzle pieces fitting together for Alabama in the secondary. So like I mentioned, Tony, the first scrimmage for Alabama is on Saturday. We're going to talk to Kalen DeBoer after that scrimmage. Won't get to watch it, but we'll obviously get, some stuff from him about how it's going. And you wrote an article with, I believe it was 5 things you had that you were hoping to learn about from the first scrimmage that Alabama's doing in fall camp Saturday. Again, they're 8 practices down. I won't even give you an intro. I'll just let you talk about what was the first thing that you said you want to see from Alabama's scrimmage.
It almost seems obvious, and I feel like a lot of times people skip over it because it's so obvious, but it's the quarterback position. I mean, it's not a competition. I don't think anyone's going to be scouring over scrimmage leaks to see who was the starting quarterback. It's obviously going to be Jalen Milroe, but how is he going to perform? Does he really show improvement? We've heard good things, and he seems really confident. But this is a game-like scenario, or at least it will be somewhat of a game-like scenario. I mean, I'm not sure how much they're gonna, really break things out. But you would think that this is the time where you kind of test your offense, and so it's going to be, how much does he recognize at the line of scrimmage? How quickly does he get the ball out? Those kind of things. I mean, he was only 3 of 9 during the spring game. Now he dealt with a lot of drops. There was a lot of pressure on him, so it's kind of hard to judge him. I think he looked better during the spring game than maybe his numbers suggest, but I definitely think you want to see an improvement from the spring game. I don't think he was at the level that Alabama fans want him to be at during the A-Day game, so Yeah, I think that obviously we're not going to be able to see it for ourselves, but you're going to want to hear or know that he's made that progression, that he's kind of picking things up the way that Kalen DeBoer is saying that he is. So that's number one, I guess, on my list.
Yeah, I think it'll be super interesting to hear, what comes out of that. And you make some good points about the A-Day game, but yeah, I think as it's been nice to focus on, kind of the other a little bit more mysterious parts of where Alabama's starting rotation will look like compared to the quarterback spot. But yeah, I mean, eventually it's going to come back to Milroe's got to make the jump that you mentioned the fans want him to see. Frankly, Alabama needs him to see. You've touched on that extensively. So yeah, I think that'll be an interesting one. In front of Jalen Milroe, the men protecting him. This was your next point you made. What are we looking for? And this kind of ties into some of the stuff we've seen from fall camp with a competition at the right tackle spot. What's going on there?
Well, as expected, Caden Proctor's kind of like taken hold of that left tackle role. And I don't think he's going to be giving it up. I think it's one of those cases where, early in camp, we saw Elijah Pritchett work at left tackle and Caden Proctor work on the second team. And now we've pretty much, since Caden Proctor has come in at left tackle, at least during the media viewing periods, we've seen him be the left tackle. And I fully expect him to be Alabama's starting left tackle. So that kind of pushes Elijah Pritchett more to the right. I think he's going to take reps at both sides, but you're going to see him battle with Wilkin Formby. And so Wilkin Formby is a redshirt freshman who didn't really play a lot last year, only a few snaps, but he's been the guy at right tackle in the first team. Even after Caden Proctor came in, took that left tackle spot from Elijah Pritchett. Now you've seen Pritchett move from the first team left tackle to the second team right tackle behind Formby. I think that's going to be a battle. I wouldn't, I've gone back and forth, and I've been almost wrong every time. I changed my prediction on that to Pritchett, and then they kept Formby at right tackle. So maybe I'm not the person to ask. But I just because Formby has been the first team guy, I don't think you just, write his name in ink on the depth chart right now. I think Pritchett definitely has a chance to kind of be that right tackle. They both got, pretty good reviews from Kalen DeBoer. He's been pretty high on both of them. Same with Chris Kapelovich, the offensive line coach. So I think they're looking for consistency there, obviously, but that's the biggest thing when you look at that tackle position is can they be consistent, and whoever is the guy that can kind of show that consistency is going to be the guy that wins the job.
Just like with you with Coach Shep, I'm just going with Coach Cap for Chris. That's going to be mine for the
go-to. I think, but yeah.
Well, I'm going Coach Cap. Yeah, so that'll be a big battle to watch with Elijah Pritchett and Wilkin Formby. I think it's a good sign for Alabama fans that Caden Proctor's made the progression that he's had, but that's been a development that we'll continue to watch for fall camp and see if anything interesting happens with the scrimmage. I think that'll be a little telling. Number 3, Tony, another position group we've talked about a lot, the cornerback room. First of all, I know you had a little update on Zabian Brown. He was in a club at practice, which I always love when players have the big old club on. I wonder if they ever just think about just giving a whack, when someone's on their way down.
They were still throwing balls to us.
There was?
They were still throwing balls at him. Yeah. He was trying to catch it. I mean, not like hard, but they were doing cornerback drills and they were tossing the ball. They still tossed them the ball. I think at one point they kind of pulled him out of that drill and they're like, But he made a one-handed catch. Yeah, he made a one-handed catch.
I just think with when you make a tackle, just a whack on the way down. Try not to draw on sportsmanlike conduct.
Probably not good for the broken hand in the cast.
Probably
not
doing
that. But yeah,
it's supposed to protect it. That's just the test. But yeah, what do you think of the cornerback room? What are you looking for to get out of the scrimmage? Obviously, we've seen a lot from that area so far.
Well, he's been a little bit limited, and Kane, he is, and Zabian Brown's been a little bit limited with that club. But on the same hand, Kane Wommack said that he's just going to be a few days of that. So it'd be interesting to see if Zabian Brown's out of the club now, if that was just like a couple of days thing, or you'd imagine this early, in camp. If he is in a club, like how much are they going to risk him in a scrimmage? So is he going to be limited during the scrimmage? And if so, does that open up the door for someone else? I think Zabian Brown has been the first team cornerback across from Damani Jackson, the USC transfer, who's going to be, I think Damani Jackson's got that one of those starting spots locked up. So it's really just a battle for that second starting cornerback spot. That's been Zabian Brown during camp, but we've also heard some really good things from fellow 5-star Jalen Mbakwe. And then you've got Deshaun Jones from Wake Forest, the transfer that started 10 games at a Power 5 team in Wake Forest and led them in interceptions with 3 interceptions last year. So I think part of the reason why we haven't seen Deshaun Jones kind of step into that first round, that first team or second team kind of rotation is because he's still learning the defense. He joined, after spring camp. And I think once he kind of gets his feet settled, I think he could make a big push. If Zabian Brown's limited during the scrimmage, could that be the time that, Deshaun Jones makes that push? I think it's worth mentioning. I think you look at a freshman, you look at, even if Zabian Brown plays, you got him and Jalen Mbakwe, you're trying to fight for playing time. Your nerves might get the best of you as a freshman. You might make some mistakes during a scrimmage and you're playing in Bryant-Denny Stadium. We got a guy like Deshaun Jones, who's kind of already been a starter. That might be an advantage for him. He's a redshirt junior. He's maybe not going to get the same butterflies as a freshman would get. And I wonder if this is an opportunity for him to kind of make that push up the depth chart. I expect him to be a contributor, regardless of whether he's just a depth guy, a rotation guy, or if he's the starter. But I think this could be a really big scrimmage in terms of him just making that move and kind of announcing his presence at Alabama.
Yeah, I think that's a really good take. I liked him a lot when I looked at just kind of his Wake Forest and even his high school film. I think he's someone who could be really fun next year, alongside Damani, who I know you and I are both pretty big fans of, and I think Alabama fans are starting to even more rally around too. So I think both the transfer corners, whatever comes out, will be interesting.
Yeah, it seems like Damani Jackson's just everything that Alabama wants at that cornerback position. You just talk to anyone around him. There's not any question marks around him. It's almost like he's just been here all along. He did join the team in December, so he has been there longer than most people. But yeah, he kind of almost seems like one of the returning players, even though he's not. It's just I think there's that much certainty around him that there's just that confidence.
Yeah, agreed. Your number 2, you mentioned players or fans rather won't have to scour any practice leaks for quarterback stuff, but this might be the thing that they're most going to be scouring, which is the performance of a certain 5-star wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Hollywood Williams. I think I said something about a Hollywood debut a couple of times when he was breaking into camp, but I think he's been the kind of not to keep on with these Hollywood puns, but the spotlight's been on him. You know what I'm saying? He's been the guy that everyone's drawn to. He could be a serious playmaker in this offense. It's kind of easy to forget that he's just a freshman. He's just 17 years old. He reclassified, but he makes some really big plays. You've seen some, I saw a leaked practice footage of him making a one-handed catch. We saw another one-handed catch, during the first day of the media availability. I think the key with him is we know what he can do as a playmaker. It's just, can he do the basic stuff? Can he line up right? Can he run the right routes? Can he just soak up the offense? And it sounds like he's doing all those things and making all those steps to kind of take things serious. I think he's going to be an instant contributor. I'm not sure he's going to be a starter just because Alabama has, they've got Jeremy Bernard, they've got Kendrick Law, and they got Kobe Prentice. Those seem to be your 3 guys, but I think Ryan Williams is going to be really in the mix. And then if you look at, just the last time we saw him in Bryant-Denny, I mean, look at those stats from the state championship game. It's just absolutely stupid. He had 12 receptions for 200 and something yards and a touchdown. He returned a kick and he basically he had 12, here it is right here, Jack. 12 receptions for 236 yards and a pair of touchdowns. He also ran in a touchdown and scored from an 86-yard kickoff return. It's I'd say that's video games, but I'm not that good at video games. I couldn't do that on a video game. So it's just he was, maybe playing in Bryant-Denny or having the scrimmage in Bryant-Denny will awaken that in him, and he'll have another big performance during the scrimmage.
Yeah, I like that. It's not his first rodeo. I like that. That's the narrative you can go with, where he has played in Bryant-Denny before and electrified. But obviously, like you said, I think that's what the coaching staff will be looking for: is does he do the little things? Does he do those? Does he make those smart plays in addition to all the highlight reel ones? So we'll see what kind of comes out of that. But yeah, I think natural that he had to be on the list for things to watch in spring camp. And then the last one you touched on, which I think is really interesting, and you've talked about this before, or when we were talking with the Bandit and Wolf guys, some of these younger players, what defensive packages that Kane Wommack maybe tries, and if anything comes out of there specifically. I know we've both written about the idea of having Deontay Lawson, Jod Campbell, and Justin Jefferson, the 3 inside linebackers who Kane Wommack said all 3 of them are starting caliber. Does that lead to maybe all of them getting on the field? Just elaborate on that a little bit. I don't mean to steal all of your thunder there in the build up to it, but yeah, I think that was an interesting point you made.
Yeah, I think that there's room for that, right? I think the biggest thing there of having all 3 of those guys on the field. I think that the thing that makes that possible is Justin Jefferson is such a fast linebacker. He's got such speed. I'm not sure if I believe the sub 4.4 time that he was clocked at in his recruiting. Yeah, I mean, but regardless of that, he's got serious speed at that position. So I think if you're in an obvious passing down where you're going to have maybe less bigger guys on the field, I think that you're gonna maybe there's a possibility to put all 3 of them in there and maybe use somebody like Justin Jefferson as what you would maybe use the money role during the dime formation. Whereas instead of bringing in a safety, do you bring in an extra linebacker because he'd be better to pick up the run if they do run a draw or something like that. Because basically, if Justin Jefferson has safety speed and in a linebacker body and with linebacker tackling ability, I think you take advantage of that because you've got one of the best 1-2 punches at inside linebacker in Deontay Lawson and Jod Campbell. I don't think Jefferson's bumping either one of those guys, but be interesting to see, like I said, on some of those passing downs. Look, we saw Alabama debut the cheetah package. I know nobody wants to bring up the cheetah package because it just was not very popular, but you'd be surprised sometimes where Alabama's got to practice some of these new packages sometime, so they might break some of these out during the scrimmage, and hopefully maybe we'll hear about them if they do. Because it's always interesting to see, the different packages and the different things they can do. Kane Wommack is creative. They're going to find ways to exploit the defense. I don't think they're like Kane Wommack said, they're still going to be a 5 defensive back team. So they're not going to take out a defensive back and put in an extra line, but they're not going to go, 3-4, that's not going to happen, or 4-3 really. But they're still going to play 4-2-5. But I think that there's ways that, especially when you get into the dime roll or something like that, where you can kind of, get a little bit more creative with how with the personnel you use on the field.
Yeah, I think that's natural to be excited about that because I think there is so much talent. When he said that, I know you and I were both, our ears kind of perked up with, oh, Justin Jefferson is at that level already. What does that maybe open up? So I think totally with the linebackers and with some of those other packages, what do you maybe see come out? And obviously, it's the first scrimmage. We're going to overread into it just like everyone else is. So whatever happens in that is obviously going to be what happens for the entire season. I'm kidding, but yeah, I think there's a ton to look forward to. We'll obviously have DeBoer coming up after, and we'll have everything he said on here on YouTube on Tide Illustrated as well. So you should subscribe there. Tony, any other final thoughts? When do you think the next ice cream truck practice will be?
I don't know. I think that sounds like a once a camp kind of thing. I don't know if that's going to be a regular. I mean, it might, but I don't know how much we're going to be getting the ice cream truck. I don't know how much our fans are on the message board could take. Can you imagine if he brought out the ice cream truck again next week? Our message board would collapse.
Or maybe after beating Western Kentucky, and that's worthy of an ice cream truck game. I don't know what sort of standard are we setting here.
Oh, all right. Yeah, bringing it into the season would be something as well. I don't know.
Wheel it onto the field.
What if ice cream is the key to success, Jack? What if that's what's going to fuel Alabama to a championship? Who knows? Sounds like
a great feature story that would be on Tide Illustrated's front page ASAP if that ends up being the case. So all the more reason you should follow.
One time, right?
Exactly. Well, yeah, we'll have all the ice cream coverage and obviously all the important camp stuff for you guys going forward as fall camp continues. We'll have more updates like these and everything covered from the scrimmage on Saturday. So tune in, subscribe here, subscribe on Tide Illustrated, and we'll see you next time.